Daf Yomi Tractate Menachos, page 58. A, top of the page with the words Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, hi, oisam mayovidle. The Gemara asks, and what does Rabbi Yochanan, who maintains that the prohibition against bringing leftover portions up to the ramp applies to all of the items listed in the Braita, do with this term them in the verse? It's an extra term. What does he do with it? How does he darshan it? Has he explained it? Has he expound upon it? What does he do with the word otam, them, in the verse, as an offering of first produce you may bring them? Leviticus 2:12, from which Rabbi Elazar learns that only first fruits and the 2 loaves are included in the prohibition. The Gemara answers he requires it for that which is taught in a Braita. One might have thought that an individual may donate and bring to the temple a gift offering similar to those 2 loaves brought by the community. And in support, I will read with regard to this offering the verse that deals with other gift offerings. That which has gone out of your lips you shall observe and do according to what you have vowed freely to the Lord your God, even that which you have promised with your mouth. Deuteronomy 23:24, which would mean that the offering is consecrated and he must bring it as he declared. Talmud Lomal, Kol ben reishis takrivu tzibur, amalti lecho velo yochid. Therefore, the verse states, as an offering of first produce you may bring. The phrase you may bring is written in the plural, meaning that it is addressed to the community. Therefore, it is interpreted to mean, I said to you, that a community may consecrate and bring the 2 loaves. A community may consecrate and bring 2 loaves, which are an offering of first produce, but an individual may not consecrate and bring the 2 loaves of this nature. Yochol lo yehei yochid, maybe sheina maybe chayvasui leyoytzev avo yehei tzibo, maybe shemaybe chayvasui leyoytzevo Talmud lomar osam. ומה יש לך להביא? שתי הלחם מן השאור וכורים מן הדבש. The Braita continues, one might have thought that only an individual may not bring 2 loaves as a gift offering, as an individual does not bring his obligatory offering in a manner similar to those loaves, meaning perhaps specifically an individual who never has an obligatory offering of 2 loaves may not bring 2 loaves as a gift offering, but the community shall bring 2 loaves as a gift offering, as the community does bring its obligatory offering in a manner similar to those 2 loaves. Therefore, the verse states, you may bring them, to exclude the possibility of a communal gift offering of 2 loaves. The Braita continues, and what is there left for you to bring as offerings that come from leaven and honey? The 2 loaves that come from leaven and the first fruits that come from honey, meaning sweet fruits. Lama nemar kol devash ve'im nemar kol devash lama nemar kol seo mipnei sheyesh b'seo ma she'ein b'dvash v'yesh b'dvash ma she'ein b'seor. The Gemara asks, and may the 2 loaves not be sacrificed as communal gift offerings, but isn't it taught in a Braita with regard to the verse, as any leaven and any honey, you shall not burn any of it, Leviticus 2:11. If it is stated any leaven, why is it stated any honey? And if it is stated any honey, why is it stated any leaven? I don't get it. They're two different things. In other words, why is it necessary for the verse to repeat the inclusive term any? Oh, any honey or any leaven. Just say honey leaven. From which is derived that the offering is insufficient quantity of honey or leaven is included in the prohibition. The bride's answers. Both of these terms have to be stated because there is a halakha that applies to leaven that is not applicable to honey, and there's another halakha that applies to honey that is not applicable to leaven. Sar hutar miklalo b'mikdash divash lo hutar miklalo b'mikdash. The Bride explains in the case of leaven, although it may not be sacrificed on the altar, its general prohibition was permitted in certain circumstances in the temple, as the 2 loaves and the bread of the thanks offering, meaning the 4 loaves of the thanks offering that were eaten by the priests are leavened bread. By contrast, with regard to honey, there are no circumstances in which its general prohibition was permitted in the temple. Devash hutar b'shiorei menachos, so lo hutar b'shiorei menachos. Hopinei שיש בשאור מה שם דבש, יש בדבש מה שם בשאור, הוא צריך לומר כל שאור, הוא צריך לומר כל דבש. The halacha that applies to honey but not to leaven, as the prohibition concerning honey is permitted in the case of remainder of meal offerings. You could put honey in the remainder of meal offerings, meaning the priest may eat their portion of meal offerings with honey. Whereas the prohibition concerning leaven is not permitted in the case of the remainder of meal offerings, since one may not leaven this remainder. The Bride summarizes due to the fact that there is a halacha that applies to leaven that is not applicable to honey, and there is a halacha that applies to honey that is not applicable to leaven. It was necessary for the verse to state any leaven, and it was also necessary for it to state any honey. So, the hutram b'klal b'mikdash, ma'ininu lav shtei lechem, the korban inove. The Gemara analyzes the Bride when the Bride states concerning leaven that its general prohibition was permitted in certain circumstances in the temple. What is this? Isn't this referring to the halacha that the meal offering of the 2 loaves may be sacrificed by the community as a gift offering on the altar, as the 2 loaves of the communal offering themselves were not sacrificed on the altar? This would mean that 2 loaves may be brought as a gift offering by the community, which contradicts this claim of the previous Braita. Rav Amram said, no, the Braita is referring to the fact that the 2 loaves which were leavened are brought as an offering with the 2 lambs, which are brought up onto the altar as communal peace offerings. Since they are brought together, the 2 loaves and the 2 lambs are considered a single offering, and the lambs are sacrificed on the altar. Sha'al gabe hasalin hayu oilois, v'hasalim shviyodom nisonin lakoyhanim, hadu le'atar bikurim, hud yasu. The Gemara asks, if so, in the case of the first fruits also, the fruits should be considered part of the offering that was brought with them, as we learned in the Mishnah, Bikurim 3:5. As for the fledglings that were placed on top of the baskets that contained the first fruits brought to the temple, they would sacrifice these as burnt offerings, and the baskets themselves that were in the possession of those bringing the first fruits would be given to the priests. Accordingly, with regard to honey as well, its general prohibition was permitted in certain circumstances, as these first fruits containing honey are included with the sacrifice of burnt offerings. The Gemara answers, these fledglings came only to decorate the first fruits, despite the fact that they were later sacrificed as burnt offerings. Bringing the fledglings is not obligatory and therefore cannot be considered part of the same offering as first fruits. Rami Bar Choma Mirav Chizdo. The Gemara continues to discuss the prohibition against bringing leftover parts of offerings up to the altar after the sacrificial parts have been burned. Rami Bar Chamra asked Rav Chizda, with regard to one who offers up on the altar some of the meat of a bird sacrificed as a sin offering, which is meant to be eaten by the priest, what is the halacha? Is he liable to receive lashes for his action? Kol shememenu liishim u'machmana v'hai emenu liishim oidilma kol shishamo korban v'hai nami shishamo korban omale kol shishamo korban v'hai nami shishamo korban. The Gemara clarifies the possibilities. The merciful one states. The merciful one states, with regard to any item that has already had some portion of it burned in the fire on the altar, that one who sacrifices any leftover part of it violates the prohibition, and as no part of this bird sacrificed as a sin offering is burned in the fire on the altar, is he therefore exempt? Or perhaps any item that is called an offering is included in the prohibition, and since this bird is also called an offering, one is liable. Rav Chizda said to Rami Bar Chama, any item that is called an offering is included in the prohibition, and this bird sacrificed as a sin offering is also called an offering. Ketanai Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kol Shimon Shima Bikiva Omer Kol Shisham Korban. The Gemara notes Rabbi Yochanan dilemma is subject to dispute between Tanaim, as his Tana Brayta Rabbi Eliezer says only any item that has already had some portion of it burned in the fire on the altar is included in the prohibition. Do not burn. Rabbi Akiva says any item that is called an offering is included in this prohibition. If you want to ask, what is the difference between the opinions of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer? Rabbi Eliezer says any item that has already been supported. Any item has some portion burned. And Rabbi Akiva says any item that is called an offering. If it's burned, it's an offering. If it's an offering, it's burned. So what's the difference? So Rabbi Akiva says there is a difference. The difference between them concerns the cases discussed earlier of one who brings some of the meat of a bird's offering up to the altar. Rabbi Akiva maintains that he is liable. It's called an offering. He still brought it. Rabbi Eliezer says no, it wasn't burned yet. He's exempt. He didn't actually burn it yet. Okay? That's a good point. Rav Amar Log Shemin Shemitzoyre Yigminayu Titani Levi Kol Korbanam Log Shemin Shemitzoyre. Rav says the difference between them concerns the log of oil that accompanies the guilt offering of the recovered leper, as Levi teaches concerning the consecrated items given to the priests as gifts. The verse states every offering of theirs shall be most holy for you and for your sons. Numbers 18:9. The phrase every offering starts to include the log of oil of a leper. This oil is not burned on the altar. Nevertheless, Rekiva would deem one who brings some of this log to the altar liable, as is called an offering, whereas Eliezer would deem him exempt, since no part of it is burned in the fire. Tanu Rabbanon Sol Bal Taktiru Eini Ela Kulo Eina Kulo Miksaso Minayin Tamaloma Kol Ehu Minayin Tamaloma Ki Kol. The Gemara returns to discussion about the prohibition against sacrificing leaven. The sages taught in Brayta, when the Torah states, with regard to leaven, do not burn it, see Leviticus 2:11, I have derived only that one who burns, all that is liable, as will be explained. From where is it derived that one who burns, only part of it is also included in the prohibition. The verse states, any, kol, leaven, which serves to include such a case. The Brayta adds, this halakha has been derived only with regard to leaven in a pure state. From where is it derived that the same applies to one who sacrifices it in a mixed state, meaning mixed with another substance? The verse states the additional expression as ki at any leaven. Micah Omar Amarabai Hochi Kamal Sol Batektiru Eli Ela Kazais Chatzi Zayas Benayin Tamanomal Kol Ehu Benayin Tamanomal Ki Kol. The Gemara analyzes this Brayta. What is it saying? What is the meaning of the term all of it? And the term part of it, Abaye said, this is what the Brayta is saying. When the verse states about the leaven, do not burn it, I have derived only that this prohibition applies to an olive bulk of leaven. From where is it derived that this prohibition applies if it is only half an olive bulk? The verse states any leaven. Furthermore, from where is it derived that one is liable not only for leaven itself, by itself, but also for leaven in its mixed state? The verse states any leaven, as any leaven. Rava Amar Hikama Soba Tiktiru Eni Elakoi Meit Chatzi Komet Binahin Tamid Lomar Kol Eruv Binahin Tamid Lomar Kichol. Rava said that there is a different interpretation of the Bride. This is what the Bride is saying when the verse states about leaven, do not burn it. I have derived only that this prohibition applies to the entire handful that is removed from the meal offering. From where is it derived that this portion applies to half of the handful? The verse states any leaven. Furthermore, from where is it derived that one is liable not only for leaven by itself, but also for its mixed state? The verse states any leaven. The Gemara asks, with regard to what principle do Abai and Rava disagree? The Gemara answers that Abai holds there is such an entity as a handful that is less than the volume of 2 olives. Now we're turning to 58b. And Abai consequently maintains that there is such a matter as a halakhically significant burning of a handful, even if it is less than the volume of an olive bulk. It follows that the phrase any leaven teaches that if one sacrificed less than an olive bulk of a handful that was leaven, he is liable. Okay? You know what? Let's just take it to the end. It's a very short daf here, so just finish. We'll close out 58. One whole thing. Okay? The Rava Omar, what does Rava say? Ein kometz pachos mishtei zeisim v'inaktor b'chus v'gezais. And Rava says there is no such entity as a handful that is less than the size of 2 olives, and consequently the mitzvah not to burn leaven is referring initially to a full handful of 2 olive bulks. And Rava holds that there is no such matter as halakhically significant burning of a handful if it is less than the volume of an olive bulk. Therefore, one cannot derive from the phrase as any leaven that one can be liable for sacrificing leaven of less than 1 olive bulk. Instead, the phrase must be referring to a case where half the handful is leaven. Itmar hamalim nisol midvash al gavi mizbeach amarav eloike mishum seor veloike mishum devash veloike mishum eroi seor umishum eroi devash. The Gemara discusses another dispute between Abai and Rava on this topic. It was stated with regard to one who offers up a mixture made of leaven and of honey on the altar. Rava says he is flogged with 4 sets of lashes for this act, as the verse, as any leaven and any honey, you shall not burn any of it as an offering made by fire to the Lord. Leviticus 2:11 includes 4 separate prohibitions. He is flogged. 1 set due to the prohibition against sacrificing leaven, he is flogged. A 2nd set due to the prohibition against sacrificing honey, and he is flogged. A 3rd set due to the prohibition against sacrificing mixtures of leaven, and he is flogged. A 4th set due to the prohibition against sacrificing mixtures of honey. Abai says one is not flogged for a general prohibition, meaning a single mitzvah in the Torah that includes many different prohibited acts, since all these actions are covered by the prohibition. It's all one thing. You shall not burn. It is considered a general prohibition for which one is not flogged. The Gemara cites a dispute between the sages with regard to the opinion of Abai. There are those who say that Abai concedes that in any event the offender is flogged with 1 set of lashes for sacrificing leaven, and he is also flogged the 2nd set of lashes for sacrificing honey, as these are not considered general prohibitions, since the phrase "you shall not burn" is referring to both leaven and honey. It is as though they were written, "You shall not burn leaven, you shall not burn honey." And there are those who say that Abai maintains that the offender is not even flogged with 1 set of lashes, as the prohibition he transgressed is not specific to one matter, like the prohibition against muzzling. The principle that one is liable to be flogged for violating a prohibition is derived from the juxtaposition of the mitzvah, "You shall not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain." Deuteronomy 25 verse 4. With the verses that mention lashes, it is inferred from this juxtaposition that one is not liable to be flogged for violating prohibitions whose circumstances are not similar to that of muzzling. For example, a general prohibition that is not referring to one specific action.